Okay, and 3, 2, 1. Jeffrey, thanks for coming in, mate. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Maybe you can move your mic just down a little bit. Just down. Like, yeah, there we go. That's looking great.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, here we are. You finally come in. You've come armed with all sorts of wonderful stuff. Now, maybe you want to introduce us to the booze you got. You bought something called corn wine. Is that right?
It's called kornbranntwein,
Yeah.
which is Dutch, single barrel, 10 years in the barrel. I actually don't know how you call it in English, but it's from a Dutch distillery. This one is from... It was put in the barrel in the 21st of January 2000, and it came out of the barrel on the 31st of March 2010. So it's already 10 years in this bottle, so it's actually 20 years old.
Wow.
This is from barrel number 7. Yeah, this is bottle number 281. I can put it
Well, it's
in front of the camera.
Yeah, do that. What's that? Zuidam?
Zuidam. Yes.
Zuidam. Okay.
Zuidam.
Oh, it's lovely. It's really good.
Yeah, it is. It's something that you don't regularly get, especially not here in Hong Kong.
Right.
I got it as a going away present when I moved to Hong Kong.
Ah, right.
So that also means that if this one is from 2010, that means I'm here for almost 10 years.
Oh, I beat you by 3 years. What brought you out to Hong Kong?
If I have to boil down to one word, it would be love. But
it's always a mistake, you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's always a mistake.
It was not directly, but actually, what brought me here was the work of my wife.
Okay.
And I was an entrepreneur back in the Netherlands.
Right.
And at one point, she said we might have an opportunity to move to Asia.
Yep.
And I said, fine, I will go with you, and I will find something to do, which I did.
Yep.
So that was, say 10 years ago. And we would move here for 3 to 5, which after 10 years, something went wrong. So because we were supposed to be 3 to 5 years, so it's now 10 years. So something changed.
Right. But I noticed when you're looking at the equipment down over here, you mentioned the BNC adapter, so indicating a bit of a networking background. Maybe you want to go into that. What's the story there?
What's the story there? Like, actually, originally I'm by education a mechanical engineer, but a commercial mechanical engineer, but never worked in that field. When I graduated, I already set up a computer wholesale company together with a business partner. So at that point, of course, it was at that point it was already like Ethernet and that kind of thing. But before that, I helped out with an internet service provider, and then of course.
What year was that, by the way? Okay, it's going back a few. Look at that.
Yeah, like I think that was 96 that I worked at the internet service provider.
Right.
So that was back then like dial-up modems, like 14K4, 28K8.
Not even 56K.
No, those were new. Like.
Yeah.
While I was there, those came out, and we had to upgrade our modem rack with new hardware because everybody was starting to use 56K modems.
Right.
So that was that time, and some of the companies that at that point were trying to get on the internet were still having. Coax cabled networks.
Right.
So
Twisted pairs.
At that point when somebody would move his computer and his connection would get disconnected, then the whole network of the whole company would shut down, because you had like BNC was like you had a terminator at the end, and if somebody would disconnect it somewhere in the middle, the whole network would go down. That happened a lot.
I see. Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
that was when I came into like IT, let's put it that way.
Right.
And from that further on, I did a lot with IT hardware, networks, assembly of computers.
Yeah. So a bit of an old school hacker then.
Yes, but I've never got into like I could assemble PCs and I could like install operating systems, but I never got into like the coding part of it.
Oh, the writing the software. You mean back then or ever?
Ever. I never got into writing code.
Okay.
Like I actually learned basics, but that was like 10 print hello, 20 go to 10, that kind of stuff. Yes. But no, never really got into like full code scaling of full scale coding. No.
Right. Yeah. But have you never been intrigued to do that? I mean, surely being around technology so long, you might have, or have you always been more user focused? Like,
I've always been more user focused. I've always been more on the understanding and say system requirements or software requirements. I'm not the person that can sit for hours and type out code. No. I'm analytical, so I can, when I see, for instance, at one point, years later, a couple of years ago, when I had my user experience web design agency, there were two coders looking at code on the same screen, and they couldn't figure out why a particular box was offset on the screen when you look at the HTML and the actual web page. So they were looking at the code and they were like, why doesn't this like line out correctly? And I was standing behind them as a hovering project manager. Like I know coders hate that, and I was standing behind them and I was looking at the code and I was comparing that, and and at one point I'm like, what is a semicolon doing there?
Right.
And they were looking at each other. They were looking at the code and at each other again, and they removed that semicolon and then like refresh, and then it like lined out perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's a once of a lifetime occurrence for me to look at code and get an error, a bug, something like that out of there. Yeah. But it was more of just comparing, and I was comparing line wide and like this one doesn't line out. Like that doesn't.
Yeah.
That was the closest that I got a bug out.
Then so you had this design. What was it? A design agency, a user experience. What exactly did you sort of go into? What was the scope of it?
When I moved to Hong Kong, I wanted to be more creative. I was. Let's step back. Back to when I was in the Netherlands. So after graduation. What I would do is I set up a computer wholesale company. After that, I did some...
just wait a second now. We can continue. Sebastian's about to roll on out. Okay. Cheers, my man.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy the kornbranntwein?
The kornwine. Okay, thank
Cheers,
you.
buddy.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
So... Actually, when after the computer wholesale company, I started doing consultancy work, also for the government. Did some project management, and at one point I I started doing IT related stuff, but also network related stuff. So at one point I ended up at a internet service provider, but then not the one that I interned at, but like a bigger one, a one that would supply ADSL, SDSL, fiber optic cables. They would have that already. They would have their own network, and then they would supply that to end users. So so that also a little bit of my network background comes to there. But I would at that point be I was the team manager, team leader of the service implementation team. So yes, very technical, but also at that point very logical, very operational. Implementing a new service, you have to think about everything. All the software for order management has to be updated with this new service, etc. So that's how I came into IT and network. And from that, because knowing what customers want, and even back to my education, which is commercial engineering, because as you know, salespeople can sell something, but it's technically not viable to make, or technical people can build something, but it's not sellable because it's too complex, or it is not user-friendly. So on that bridge, that's always where I've been. Understanding user requirements, and then at that point translate it into technical requirements or technical execution. So when I came here, I wanted to be more creative. So at that point, I thought, why not sell websites? Because when I was here, when I just first moved here, I saw that the quality of websites were terrible. No user friendliness. A lot of the websites that were being built were built by technical people and not from a user perspective. So I thought, well, I'm not a designer, I'm not a UX person per se, but in the land of the blind, one eye is king. So I started doing that, and from that I hired my first staff and started selling websites, and built a company that eventually I sold by a management buyout.
Right. And that sellout was done here in Hong Kong, is that right?
Yeah.
Or was it? I know you've also got a bit of a background with, I think, in Palo Alto.
Yes.
You've got some sort of thing, but maybe that's probably later on in the story. Is that right?
That's way later on.
Way later on. Incremental steps. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Because when I moved to Hong Kong, I actually at that point had a viable business, back in the Netherlands, which was data recovery.
So great fun.
Get data from broken hard drives.
Have you made much from Bitcoin?
No, that was pre-Bitcoin. That was like 2009, 2008, 2010.
Well, if you want, there's a hard drive somewhere in the dump with must be about 50 bitcoins on there.
Get it to me. We'll split the difference.
Yeah. The problem is finding that hard drive.
Probably yes. You have to start digging. But no. So that was quite an interesting business, but very much in, as I call it, emergency business. Nobody wants to know anything about data recovery. Same thing as nobody wants to know anything about the fire department. Unless they have a fire, then they want the fire department to be there, 1 minute ago. And there was, a business that knowing a technical trick and then try to market that. And later on, I started realizing that that was usually something that I was used to do. Like somebody knows a trick and try to market that, which is something totally different than what I eventually ended up with in startups. And startup is a definition as a scalable, repeatable business model. And then at that point, you do more of a try to find something that people want and then start building that, which is a different perspective of actually building a business.
Yeah, but I mean, from another perspective, is like people don't really know what they want. I mean, you could describe something to them, but then it's like, unless the person is actually using some sort of kind of like a prototype or some sort of like mock thing which demonstrates the concept, it's most of the time, like I found that people generally don't know what they want until it kind of becomes clear, and then like, oh, I get it, I see the impact, the application of this thing, and then they say, oh yes, I need this or I don't need this.
Usually at that point, that's like step 2 or step 3.
Okay.
Usually at that point, what I say is step 1, and that's a hypothesis. You think there is a problem, and then you start formulating that problem for yourself, and then you start trying to validate that hypothesis. That at that point, you just say, is this really a problem, or is this really something that is, an issue? Quite often, you would say, okay, is this thing that I'm thinking of that I want to build, is this a problem big enough to start building a viable business out of that? And then you would say, not like, hey, like people want to carry around their data, but more of like, would that be something that is it an issue? And then, of course, if you would say, but if you would have asked, do people want an iPad? Then probably at that point people would have said no, because you had laptops and you had computers and you had kind of like a mobile phone, not smartphone yet, but you had mobile phones. So why would you need something in between? But then still, if you would have at that point have an hypothesis saying like, would you be willing to consume information just from a tablet kind of device, what you would read, then there would be people saying like, that would be more interesting than carrying around a big bag of books where I just have a little screen or relatively little screen in my hand, and I could flip the pages there and consume content in that way, interactive content, web browsing, that kind of thing, and not having to carry around either books or a whole laptop. And then then you might have been able to validate an assumption like that. And of course, like most of the people quite famously, and I don't even know if that was true, but Henry Ford would have said, if I would have asked what people wanted, they would have said faster horses and not cars.
No, that's the one.
That's the one.
I think that was Ford, yeah.
Yeah, but if you would have said at that point, it's not about that, right? You would have said, would you want to move from A to B quicker than you could right now when people had still horses, right? And then that could have been, I don't know, teleportation. Yeah, if that would have been at that point a viable technology, then at that point, it might have been teleportation that came out of your assumption, your hypothesis that you said like, hey, do you want to move quicker from A to B? And of course, physics is your part of the equation here, but is it a viable technology to build? Yeah. That's something different. But does people want to move quicker from A to B? Yes. Yeah. Then airplanes. That kind of transportation modes, could come out of that. So it doesn't always have to be something that people don't know what they want. But it also at that point can be a little bit higher up. So, okay, do you want to go from A to B faster? And then try to figure out how you get people faster from A to B.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Now, this is your involvement with the startup community. So after creating this website company out here in Hong Kong, did you realize that there's another area where the man with the one eye is king? In the sense that you saw the startup scene out here in Hong Kong, you saw a bustling city, but the startup scene was like, well, non-existent at that. Well, not necessarily non-existent, but it was quite far from what it could be.
Yes, it was like when I came 10 years ago here in Hong Kong. There wasn't that much what could be a ecosystem. Right. Startup HK was just started.
I think there was Gene and
Casey.
Yes.
Yeah. And
you were also in Jonathan Buford, right?
Yes, Jonathan Buford.
You're part of that circle, is that right?
Yeah, okay. They had, I think, in September or October of 2010, they had their first startup Saturday, like the first event about startups, and I arrived here in February 2011. So that was a little bit a few months later, but that was the first things. And then you had indeed like the very first co-working space in Hong Kong, that was Boot HK, set up by Jonathan Buford. And that was like the first co-working space, if you could. It was more like a hacker space, kind of like attic, like the wall sockets for power came just from the
I recall from the ceiling.
From the ceiling, and it was just dangling somewhere around in the open air. So
that was the roots of Dim Sum Labs.
Yes.
That was,
yeah. And then of course, that was like the first kind of co-working space that was in Hong Kong. I think it was. How big was it? Maybe even smaller than it is right now. Like this space, but
memory tells me it might have been a bit big. I'm not sure. Probably about the same. Never mind.
Yeah, and there were you had Startup Mondays. I think there was events, getting speakers over. Have some photographs of that somewhere, digitally hidden, and that was it. So then the actual, like the very first real co-working space, commercial co-working space was opened, I think it was Cocoon.
Right.
And from that it took off a little bit more. Yeah. But there wasn't that much in Hong Kong when it comes to startup ecosystem back then. That was... And of course, Hong Kong being a transit city, right? There is a lot of people coming in and out. I've seen a lot of people come and go. And I've seen a lot of bullshit come and go.
Yeah.
And I've been active on and off.
Yeah.
To get back to your question of... in the land of blind, the one eye is king. I don't think so for the startup ecosystem. It was more that at that point, I had some, the agency was running okay. I had some more time and I was quite interested in, the startup ecosystem myself too. And I started mentoring at like how do you call that?
Workshops, kind of thing.
Yeah, workshop like
general assembly.
Startup weekend.
All right.
I've also been to a few Dim Sum Labs meetings. Maker Day, or what was it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Maker Day, was it Maker Day?
Maybe, I think so.
Yeah. And then of course, the normal people who think they think how to build a startup, or at least how to build a business. I always said that at that point, when the startup ecosystem started up, then you had all those marketing people coming in, social media marketing, that kind of stuff. They later on went all to trying to push and chill cryptos. Same type of people, right?
Right.
And trying to make sense of things that were going on there. Because at that point, everybody wants to do a startup, but not a lot of viable businesses out there. And trying to help people at that point, make sense of building a startup.
Yeah, wasn't the government putting like money into things like, Uber for parking spots kind of thing?
Yeah. You had some like car share companies. Right. You had Uber for parking. You had, at that point, you had no Uber yet, but or at least not in Hong Kong. You had some of those companies that you had. What was it? I think it was kind of like a digital platform for tasks, kind of like a TaskRabbit thing. You could hire somebody to do something for you.
Yeah, William Liang was behind that.
Yes, correct. William Liang was behind it. Like I can't recall what the name was, but
TaskRabbit. You're right.
Was it TaskRabbit?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Indeed. Like they were trying to build a platform for that, but Hong Kong is a particular kind of market. It's a particular city. It has their.
Maybe you want to go into that. What do you mean by that? So, like the startups that come out of Hong Kong are rather unique, you'd say. Would you?
Yeah.
How so and why?
It's either very technical, and then at that point, startups that people have never heard of before. Or which became successful but never heard of, or at that point were very focused on marketing and exposure. So at that point they really became huge because they were good at marketing themselves. I always say that Hong Kong is good for a few areas. One of them is logistics. Hong Kong is very good for logistics. Hong Kong is also very good for, say, biomedical technology, R&D. There are some very good universities here that can help out on that area. Hong Kong is also very good when it comes to fintech, financials, of course, as a, and then maybe a little bit less known is, I think Hong Kong is also very good, actually, for retail development, but.
Forgive my naive question, but what is retail development?
Development in the retail space. There is, of course, we're now living in a different time, of course, especially when it comes to retail. But Hong Kong is one of the most dense cities when it comes to retail. So that means that if you want to develop something which is retail related, there is, within, say, half an hour drive, you have different types of retail, and you have all your customers within arm reach. So it's very easy to reach out to potential customers and do pilot settings and that kind of thing.
So you mean within different shopping centers, you might try different A/B testing kind of thing? Like, okay, I like this product, I like that product. Let's try them out in different areas and see how they do.
Yeah, because you have shopping centers here that are connected to each other. Yeah, right. So you can basically walk from your A test to your B test within like 1 minute, and then go to your C test 3 minutes from now.
True.
If you are able to get there, of course, because quite often what you see is that the managers of a shopping mall are quite conservative. But if you are able to handle that, then it's so compact, so dense, and Hong Kong is very convenient. You just have to walk out of this building, go right, and you don't have to walk for like 5 minutes, and you have a 7-Eleven, you have a restaurant, you have a dry cleaning, you have everything you want in a circle of 5-minute walk, especially when you are like in a relatively high traffic area. But most of Hong Kong is high traffic.
Yeah.
Not including new territories, but when you're Kowloon, Hong Kong Island, that kind of areas, there are high traffic areas, and everything is there. It's very convenient. You just have to step on the road, put your hand up, and there's a taxi. Normal.
Yeah. This is one of the main reasons why I'm here. I just forgot something. I'm gonna have to do some editing. I need to do some
blurring.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some blurring in the background for that, and then I can stop the blur.
Okay.
After that, because there's some information over there, about the company that I don't want everywhere.
You can also just reduce the amount of pixels of the video. Then maybe I also at that point look a little bit better.
No, I won't go that far. Okay. So that's definitely true. Like retail sector out here in Hong Kong is bar none. I've seen nothing quite like it. But at the same time, it bores the hell out of me. I can barely navigate through these shopping centers. I get lost all the time. And I've been here, a long time. But, Okay, so now you're doing a lot of mentoring, I mean, within the startup world. What are you also doing any sort of investment, or how are you playing this game? I mean, I should imagine that mentoring would not be enough. It would be more like mentoring is like, should we get it? Like let's say you're single and you're interested in looking for a girl. You'll do some language exchange, something like that. You're like, okay, all right, she's quite nice. Mm-hmm. And the mentoring is the equivalent of language exchange.
I wouldn't say that, but
okay. What would you say then?
Mentoring done well is getting experience, and I can rant about mentoring and programs in Hong Kong for a very long time. But
you mean we got plenty of time?
I know. I started mentoring and going to like things like Startup Weekend, helping out there to give some feedback on the teams that were there, because I wanted to learn also for me what's out there as in new developments. Right. And at one point I also started to do some angel investments, and when I was helping out a accelerator to set up shop in Hong Kong, I was helping them out, basically, showing them around town, helping them out to select partners. And
is that startup what was it, incubator? Is that the one connected with Rafale?
No, that was Paperclip, the Amplify accelerator. That was in cooperation with Paperclip co-working space, and there was Amplify. There was an Indian accelerator that set up shop here in Hong Kong. I think they ran 2 cohorts, and when they, at one point I was helping out, and at one point they made a press release announcing the cohort, but also the people who were involved. So at that point, the press release was sent out. So a friend of mine here in Hong Kong, who is a VC VC investor, and he read the article or the press release, and then he said to me, "So now you're a renowned angel investor." And we're like, "What?" So turned out that they, in the press release, said that I was a renowned angel investor. I had done some angel investments, but to call myself or somebody else have me calling a renowned angel investor, no, that would not been on my radar. So ever since, he always introduced me to somebody else. If we were somewhere like, here, this is Jeffrey, he's a renowned angel investor. I'm like, oh. So
yeah, I've had similar. It's like,
yes. So also I've been introduced live on television for the BBC as a venture capitalist, which I'm not.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'm like, should I live on television? Like,
get your facts straight, man. Jesus
what are
Christ.
the etiquettes here? What are the etiquettes here? Like, if you're being introduced live on television on a morning show, should you start correcting the journalists, or should you just go with it? Actually, somebody who knows the answer on that, please. If you're watching this on YouTube, please comment or tweet or whatever. Please let me know what the etiquettes here are, because maybe I get to a similar situation again in the future. So then I know what to do. But no, it is. I started out at one point to do some angel investments. Terrible decision. I made some terrible wrong angel investments.
You lost your money then?
Oh, definitely. I always say, I better should have done a MBA, because that probably would have saved me, probably the same amount of money. But then I would have known how to do a discounted cash flow calculation. Now I still don't know how to do a discounted cash flow calculation, and I'm out of the money. So on the other hand, I got a ton of experience from that. Doing angel investments in early stage startups. I still have some, and I've recently, in the beginning of this year, did one, but I'm way more frugal right now, and I way more due diligence, and I have actually a little bit of a thesis right now that I get to when somebody comes to me and say hey, do you want to invest?
Go into it, or is that your secret sauce?
No, there's no secret sauce, but
I don't know. I should ask. Basically, I'm giving you an exit so that you don't have to explain it if you don't want to.
No. I know. No, it's my my thesis is more of where I can at that point also add value to as a company, and that usually is a technical founders, where at that point I can help them with the business part of it, because I understand technical people, I understand also market, and at that point I can help them out with that part of translation. Mostly SaaS related, software as a service related services.
Yeah, SaaS is a very touchy word these days.
No, it's SaaS, not SARS.
I know.
SaaS as a software as a service, and so recurring revenue models.
Right.
So that's a little bit my investment thesis right now. Preferably B2B.
Why not B2C? B2C, you get feedback rather quickly. You can adapt.
Yes.
It's like the glove fits closer to the hand. But if it's a soggy glove, your hand is nice and soggy. Do you know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. That also has a downside that if you're doing B2C and a lot of consumers aren't well equipped to take off with a product that's not 100% finished yet. A product will never be 100% finished, but a lot of them aren't able to give you the benefit of the doubt that in 5, 6, 7 months from now, the feature that they were actually expecting will be in there. Also at that point, there are, especially when it comes to feedback, even if they are totally incorrect, they will still leave a review somewhere with 1 star.
Yeah, and that burns you a bit, right?
And which can definitely burn a startup, which can definitely burn, and even if it's not true, right? Even if it's like, even if later on, maybe like if you start explaining to them, like it says, I actually didn't know. Yeah, actually you're right. But then at that point, they still not review their review. Yeah, so it's very hard in the B2C world to do it well. And actually, when I at one point was in the B2C space, I was helping out a cryptocurrency ATM provider, service provider.
Bitcoin ATM.
Yes, Bitcoin ATMs.
We both know the founder. He's rather private, so I won't say his name.
Yes. So and then you are working with technology that not everybody understands, and then you're working with consumers and technology that is hard to understand, or people don't take the time to learn, and they are consumers and they think it should be working as something that they're already been like a bank account or something else like that. That's just too hard. Even at that point, it's their own fault. You get a bad review.
Right.
Yeah. Even if you explain to them, you have tutorials. You do everything step by step. You have next to the ATM, you have first do this, first do that, first do act, then do this, then do that, and then do it. If you follow every single step, screenshot with it, etc., etc., check if this is check. And if they don't understand what they're doing and they sending money with like a Bitcoin transaction with a transaction fee that's like 1/10 of it should be, and then it's not there within 1 minute, they already wrote a bad review, or they already start screaming and start saying you're stealing my money, while that transaction is still pending and like it's not even there yet. It's just so frustrating as a founder to be. You have to be cut from a certain type of cloth. Will you be able to cope with that? And I am not the person that can cope with those kind of people that will just write bad reviews and don't understand that. It's probably me, But it's very hard. So I try to stay away from B2C. And when was the last time, from a business perspective, you wrote a bad review? Like, the amount of feedback from B2B is way more honest, is way more like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain this? People are more open to be educated when it's a B2B product than when it's a B2C product. So that's why, for me, I prefer B2B.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
It's not the only thing, but that's one of the main reasons.
Yeah, I don't know. Me personally, I think I kind of feel more alive with a B2C kind of thing. But then I also understand what you mean. But okay, so are you involved in any B2B stuff at the moment? One
of my portfolio companies, they're doing pretty well. That's B2B. What they're doing is they are developing in layman terms an order management system for dental laboratories and dentists. Basically what happens quite often now is that a dentist, you go to the dentist and you need an implant or you need a crown or something else like that. They will make a scan or they make a drawing, what sizes have to be, etc., etc. Quite often still they do that on a piece of paper and then give the piece of paper to somebody in the back office. Then they fill that in on a sheet, and then you get into like a whole communication platform, as in WhatsApp messages, email messages, PDFs, total chaos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, with the laboratory, and vice versa. So they actually pivoted it from. They came from the 3D manufacturing on-demand idea. That's where they came from originally. So they pivoted, and followed, customer discovery. And then at one point ended up with, what is it again? Food doctor, like the in English.
Foot doctor.
But
no, not that's child. I don't know. I know what you mean. I'm not going to do a search, but a foot doctor. It sounds like a very good name.
When you need soles in your shoes, right? And then, or when your feet are growing not the way that they should grow.
Right.
So what still happens there is that they would make a cast of the foot, then ship the cast to a factory, then the factory would make the sole and then ship everything back. So they started out with scanning, making an app, do a 3D scan from an iPad of the foot, and then that scan would be digitally sent to the factory and then make a sole based upon that and then send it back.
That was Dr. Kong, wasn't it? Dr. Kong
it was
pioneered that idea, right?
Probably. I don't...
Okay.
Yeah. But, of course, every idea is already done at least once. So... and from that, they found out that the communication between the manufacturer and the doctor was terrible. So they put together pretty quickly a pretty simple order management app, and then build it out, and found the traction there. And then from that, they found out that actually the dental industry was bigger and had exactly the same problem. So then they pivoted into dental. And now they are doing pretty well. They're actually closing another round right now. I topped up a little bit, and they're getting interesting amount of traction. The founder has very good grit, and it's one of the things that I really like to talk about because they're doing well, and I wish them all well. But angel investment, per definition, is something you should not do for the return on investment. Like if you're going to start angel investments to put your daughter through college, then I would say don't do that. Like make sure that you have the money to put your daughter to college, and if you have something extra, then you might want to do some angel investment. But before that, no, because it's the chances that you really get return on investment from angel investment are very slim.
So you're just doing it for helping society kind of thing.
Also to be involved, and of course, if something comes out of there, it would be nice.
Yeah.
But it's also, to stay involved and to I've been an entrepreneur almost all my working life. I've only had a salary, not being, let's put it that way, not being responsible for my own income. That was probably 12, no, maybe even 15 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So, it is this for me when you're doing angel investment. It has to be something that you don't want, not expecting back, and you want to do that to get to stay involved. And then at that point, I've experienced, I've been an entrepreneur almost all my working life. I can share that. And of course, I'm not always right, but at least when a founder sometimes comes to me and says hey, I'm having this problem, I'm like, okay, sit down, explain it to me. And while they're explaining, they might have, maybe I've done something here wrong. Or maybe at that point I'm asking, okay, you're now going in that direction. What made you decide to go in that direction? Was that decision based upon the right information? And then, you start helping them in that sense. So, it is, for me, it's about staying involved, seeing what's out there, helping the founders. And then with that experience, again, maybe do some funding rounds for them, helping them out. Maybe do some M&As, helping them out.
Right. But I think you also started up or helped found one of these a meetup. It was about a post-analysis. So in other words, understanding what founders have done wrong, so that you build up an arsenal of this sort of information, which could actually indirectly help you as well as future companies that you potentially invest in, as well as helping other people. Maybe you can tell us more interesting. About that. Is that correct? What's the name of this group?
It is actually it's a conference.
Okay.
Called Postmortem Conference.
Oh, Postmortem. That's the one.
Postmortem.
Not post-analysis. Postmortem.
Postmortem. It's actually I'm trying to stay away a little bit now from the word postmortem because it has a negative connotation, of course, and especially now with COVID.
What's the negative connotation?
No, it's you do postmortem on dead bodies,
people, right?
Yeah. So, so I'm officially the title is Postmortem Conference, Startup Lessons Learned. So what I'm now, of course, the URL, etc., is still Postmortem Conference, but I quite often now just call it a Startup Lessons Learned Conference. It's a conference where I have two types. One is a full day and one is a evening. And when it's a full day, we have 6 to 8 speakers could be founders, could be lawyers, could be mentors, could be investors, and they share a personal story about something they experienced when working on, for, or at a startup, or investing in. And it's very personal. So one of the things, for instance, one of these speakers shared that his business partner went off with almost all the cash in the company, and then he had to live in London for, I think, like 8 months without electricity and hot water just to keep the company afloat.
Good grief.
Yes. But he said a good thing came from it, because at that point he had no money to buy cigarettes, so he also quit smoking.
Well, at least it shows that he has a positive side.
Yes.
To be able to extract that one meager happy story from there.
Yes. and now he's a successful entrepreneur with a very successful business in the education space. Right. So that's, for instance, one of the examples. Another example is that one of the founders was always busy with working on a startup. He had a girlfriend, was always working, always at one point even that he had a staycation planned with his girlfriend for the first time in, I think, like 2 years or something like that, for a weekend. So booked a hotel, etc., etc. And on Friday, he got a message from an investor: "I'm arriving tomorrow morning, and I'm expecting a presentation tomorrow afternoon. And on Sunday, we will go through the whole new funding round." So away his staycation, of course. And afterwards, at one point, he just said during the conference where he was presenting, during his talk, he said, at one point, my girlfriend came to me and said, "I cheated on you because you're never there." And that's very powerful, very personal and very powerful. But those kind of stories are being shared. In hindsight, actually now they're married, so they were able to work it out. But that kind of stories, that's the stories that I'm looking for when I'm organizing that conference.
Right.
So also had the investors talk about their failures or their non-investments or their they were not eager enough to invest in a certain company that later on became interesting, or they invested in a company and then that founder used that money investment not to put in his own company but to start investing in other companies. Those kind of stories, that's something that I really like to hear. We had speakers from Uber. We had speakers from one of the speakers came from Theranos, actually one of the whistleblowers. She talked about her experience and her lessons learned in Theranos. We had a speaker from Gobi Bikes, that's the Hong Kong bike sharing company that failed.
Why did they fail, by the way?
Why they failed?
Oh.
I don't know if it's what I get from it. I wasn't there, of course, but what I get from the presentation and what I get from I know the person pretty well, but basically what happened was they got money, and that money required them to expand into other regions.
Other than Hong Kong. Okay.
And that was just a bridge too far. That was too much for them to handle, and a lot of their bikes in that new territory or that new region, that expansion region, just vanished because that region was too big.
That was a very polite way of saying it. You said it very politely.
Yeah. It's not my story to tell. Let's put it that way. So I think
how are
they
you doing
blew,
on the booze? So how are you doing on the booze? Do you need a bit of a top
yes.
up?
Yeah. No, I actually, if I can have like a rum and coke, then
there we
great.
go. Okay.
Yes.
Well, so here. Let me pass a coke.
Yeah. Then I'll finish this.
No problem. Drink in your own pace. We'll do rum and coke. There you go. I'm gonna have a neat. I'll have a neat.
Whiskey.
Highland Scotch, Highland single malt.
Yeah, I failed to bring my 21-year-old Hibiki because I didn't want to get mugged on the street.
Please don't. Please don't. I have a 17-year-old Hibiki that I protect. I guard. I only reserve it, you know, for very special occasions. That 7. But you have a 21.
And I have 2 17s.
Yeah, all right. You're just flexing, bastard. You're just flexing there.
A friend of mine always says, like he also likes good wines and good whiskeys and that kind of thing. Yes. He said you always have to buy 3 bottles. 1 to drink, 1 to sell, and 1 to keep. So always buy 3. So that no matter what, always buy 3.
That is so true. Would you like some ice?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay.
If there still is.
Hang about. Okay, so you bang that in there.
Okay.
And then lovely. Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah. You do your best there.
Whoop.
Yeah, and I'll whack that back into that.
I like this.
It's a bit melty at the moment.
It's fine. It's hot outside. It's summer, here. Hong Kong summer.
It is. All right. Okay. Now, where were you in the story? Well, cheers, sir.
Yes, cheers. So where?
That's great.
Where were I?
Where were you?
Where was I? Sorry, English is not my first language, right?
Where was I? That's right.
Where was I? Okay.
No, where was I? Yeah. This is enjoyable.
Yeah,
okay.
that's.
We were talking about different parts of places that the bicycles got stolen.
Yeah.
And I think you concluded that.
Yeah.
You said it wasn't your story to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like you sort of become quite passionate about this
failures.
I really like the name Postmortem. Me personally, but I'm a very dark, I enjoy a bit of gallows humor, right? Okay. So Postmortem is a great name for me.
Yeah.
And
now from that, I started also because Postmortem conference you can only organize that many times, and it's quite a lot of operations to do that. So at one point I thought, you know what? Maybe there are some interesting stories to tell, what we at that point can do as a podcast. So at that point, I made a little spin-off called Mea Culpa. So the Mea Culpa Startup Lessons Learned podcast, where at that point people, where I interview people to talk about their Mea Culpa moments. And for the people who don't know what Mea Culpa means, I don't know if you know what Mea Culpa means.
You explain it. I've heard it before, but I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
I even looked it up. I even looked up the name on your website, and I've forgotten. So you go ahead.
Okay. It's in English you could say it like, through my actions, something went wrong. Yeah. So it's a little bit more. It's not per definition a confession, but it's more of like, I have done some actions and there were some results of those actions and I've learned from that. So I'm now sharing that so other people don't make the same mistakes. So that's a mea culpa.
I see.
Yeah, it's Latin, and it really resonates with what I'm trying to do there, because the podcast is more interview style, also at that point going through the person's history, and then at that point get some learnings what they've done. a little bit less open because it's a podcast. Everybody can listen. It's spread out. The conference is done based upon Chatham House rules, so that's why I also cannot do it.
Could you please expand on what rules?
Chatham House rules.
Maybe I don't know.
Okay, the Chatham House rules are. It's actually a quite interesting rule, especially when you're organizing stuff. The Chatham House rule is that if you have a meeting, then at that point, inside of that meeting, everything what's being said may be brought outside of that meeting, but may not be attributed to people who were in the room.
Fair. That sounds like a nice. Okay.
Yeah,
so the lessons, the fundamental, the thrust of each of the stories, the lessons can be transferred, but you basically anonymize it, pseudo-anonymize it, kind of thing.
Yes. You in theory you cannot say which company it was and which person it was that said that.
Right.
Yeah. So so you can anonymize it. You can make it data that's shareable, but you cannot attribute it to a particular thing, which is sometimes a little bit hard because when you're talking about a bike sharing company in Hong Kong, then there were only like two, and one was a big Chinese one.
Right.
Yeah. So there are some challenges there, but of course, like if it's not public knowledge, then at that point you're not allowed to attribute that to a person. So that's the Chatham House rules. Just Google it. It's there. I quite often do events based upon that because it just gives a little bit more freedom of speech.
Right.
So some of the talks that we done are recorded during the conference, but some of them aren't. So if the speaker at that point is not comfortable with that or doesn't afterwards even said like I've shared more than I wanted, I don't want this, can you please delete the footage, then we'll do that.
Yeah, I found like one of my guests so far has requested anonymization, and
you blurred out his face, or
well, what I was trying to go through the software to try how to do blur, but then I found that there's a subtraction thing where I can actually take my video and overlay it on top of the person's face, so it'll be just like a square, like where your face is, but just my face will be there instead of your face. I'll see your body and everything around you. And my thought there was like, it'd be a bit boring somebody seeing like, a happy face or something like that. It's more interesting. You would be able to see my facial reactions to what the person is saying. So there still is an element of, you're still able to get that more information from this conversation, body language wise. But I mean, it was just one incident. But I also found that the feedback from that was people were saying that they prefer seeing the person's face.
Next time maybe a deep fake, make another person's face. I don't know, Obama or something else like that.
I don't know, maybe. But the thing is, like, I don't want to invest too much time and energy into the process. And, I am a busy lad, No.
I know how much time it is, like, to edit things, like especially when it comes to podcast.
Caught off guard, eh? I got caught off guard.
Yes, but that's fine. So that's the Postmodern Conference, the Startup Lessons Learned. I really want that other side of the medal being listened to, like the other side of the journey, the opportunity cost, the financial cost, the mental health cost, the relationship cost. All those aspects are often not well addressed.
That was, I was going to bring up 2 points about this. The first one is that for somebody considering going into a startup or starting up something, attending a conference or a workshop or listening to these sorts of podcasts significantly informs you of the kind of, the sort of soft as well as hard problems that you will be facing ahead of time. But and the second point is that quite unlike places like Silicon Valley, where everything is just so gung ho, and you always gotta be presenting that image of great success. I am the valiant warrior, and I go out and I conquer things, and I come back and I never fail. Whereas on the other side of that particular individual, it's probably like potentially absolute chaos that's going on, and you have no idea what's going on behind that scene. And just merely speaking about failure might not be, it's just too much for these people.
Yeah, actually now I am, one of the things I also do is I'm the chair of the SME committee of the Dutch Chamber of Commerce here in Hong Kong. And I had still in the process of doing a little exercise that I'm reaching out to all the members and asking them to do an online coffee with me.
Right. So this will be another podcast sort of thing.
No.
On the mea culpa.
No, this is just to get to know all the members who are there. So it has nothing to do with mea culpa or whatever.
Okay.
So but I get to the point later. So I've been now talking to a lot of SME entrepreneurs in mostly Dutch entrepreneurs here in Hong Kong, and also in the Netherlands that has good connections with Hong Kong. And what you see is, if you ask them like, hey, how are things going? Now, everything goes great. And blah, blah, blah. And of course it's tough, but everything goes great. And then you ask them like, what? It sounds nice, but I think you're really struggling. No, it's good. It goes great. Of course, it's hard times, and then you ask them, for instance, how much did you invoice last month? And then they would say, for instance, 5,000 Hong Kong. What is it, like 600 US? Anyway, 5,000 Hong Kong. I think you have a bigger problem here. I think you're in denial, because 5,000 Hong Kong is not enough to pay your cost. So I actually think that a lot of people, what you say, they show as if they're doing great, but actually behind the scenes it's not going great. And I really hope that those people will at one point, hopefully quick enough or early enough, start realizing that they have a problem, and then at that point try to seek help or change something. Because you only have that much runway, and if you're running out, then that's the end of the runway, and you go down. So I think actually, especially now when this is recorded, we're in the second, some people call it the third wave, but I call the second wave in Hong Kong when it comes to COVID-19. I don't think we are going to be out of that for the next 6 months, at least not with restrictions and recession, that kind of thing. I think actually that some people say we had the worst. I don't think so. I think we are going actually get more than we have already now. And if you're already struggling now, you're really going to struggle in 2 or 3 months from now. And talking to the people, the SMEs, the entrepreneurs of this world, and of course this is a very small subset of it. There's the Dutch people or Hong Kong people that have close connections with the Netherlands and vice versa. It's either going great, because I also spoke to people that are indeed doing very well, because either they're their product or their services are not COVID related at all.
Right.
Or they found something at that point that would, really benefit from the COVID-19 situation. So, I've spoken to people who are on par of what they did last year. I've spoken to people who are way above what they did last year. And I've spoken to people who are way below, like 10, 20% of what they did last year. And that's just not sustainable. So when it comes to being true to yourself and saying things aren't right or not going right, it's usually it's a process. I think people have to get to that. And they have to go through certain stages to finally, at one point, say it's not going well. But maybe somewhere I can help. I don't know. And that's why also the podcast is here. It's there are stories there that maybe if somebody like that listens to it, say, oh, maybe I should change something, or. Maybe before we get to that stage, I have to change something. Like one of the stories at the podcast at one point was that two co-founders, one founder, the person that I was interviewing, it was her idea. She put a little bit of her own money in. She had a co-founder. They were pitching to an investor. They had a client. And all of a sudden, her co-founder, plus investor, plus client, started a new company with the same idea. And there was no co-founder agreement. So she was there, basically on her own. I hope that story, if somebody listens to that and wants to start a startup, now realize that the very first thing you do when you find a compatible co-founder, which is also a story, of course, how you find a compatible co-founder, but if you find one, put things on paper. Have a co-founder agreement. Split things up. Have things on paper, because quite often when you start, you're the best friends. You're like, yes, let's start, and you're very enthusiastic, and you're working quite hard on your product, etc., and like, that piece of paper we'll get to later, and we're friends, right? And you know what I said, right? Yes. And you know what I said, yes. But as soon as pressure is building, stress is coming up, money is involved, investors is involved, people change. Or maybe not change, but people react differently than you thought they would. So at that point, you want things on paper. And I've been in that position too. No co-founder agreement, or not a corporation or a piece of paper where we said we're working on this together. And so that was with my last startup that I did. One of my points was, right in the beginning, we are going to sign a co-founder agreement. And my co-founder was, no, that's not. Yes, we go. Okay, we will do one. And I'm glad we did. So those are the things I hope that people get as a takeaway from the things that I do, that no matter where they are at that point, get a co-founder agreement. Get other things that they learned from the podcast, from the conference, and maybe, I don't know, 5 years from now, send me a tweet, if Twitter at that point is still a thing, saying like, "Hey, thank you. You really saved me right now, because I'm now doing this."
Or better yet, pass it forward and start up a similar sort of like Mea Culpa podcast in your own area with the startup founders in that area too. There, more people can learn.
Like if somebody is listening and they want to do a postmodern conference, startup lessons learned, reach out to me. I'm happy to help in your area. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough area, man. Startups can be absolutely grueling on you. It can be absolutely grueling if you get things wrong or lack of experience or so many things.
Yes.
So what's happening with the SARS-CoV-2 situation at the moment, how do you see this fabric unraveling? How do you see the fallout? What do you see happening over the next, 2 to 6 months to a year? I know, I mean, I don't normally like forecasting, weather forecasts, but I think it might be okay, and maybe it might also be good to throw in a few cautionary points about when you start seeing things getting a bit too dark, what mitigations could potentially be done in order to sort of like alleviate things or just change things a little bit. Or is this question a little bit too unfair?
No, it's nobody can predict the future, right? Because it is hard. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I sometimes just shake my head when I see what other countries are doing when it comes to COVID. Even here, like, we now have more than twice the amount of active cases than we had on the top of April, March, when the COVID hit here for the first time. And in between, almost everybody was wearing a mask. Everybody was very aware. Like here, COVID aside, it's quite acceptable to wear a mask when you are having a fever or when you're are just feeling a little bit sick. And here almost everybody was wearing a mask. And then still we had an outbreak that was more than twice the amount that we had previously. And everybody's very aware. So that really means that and then I hear countries that are still thinking if masks should be, mandatory or not, or should not be mandatory, should be mandatory. Mask doesn't help anything, but actually I think that masks help. And yet we had a big outbreak here. But what I see, but I'm not data complete, but what I've seen is that a lot of the cases in Hong Kong, the local transferred cases, came from especially from food-related restaurants, food-related gatherings. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like in the comments downstairs, tweet at me your bull, but correct me with data. I'm open for that. But that means that those were the moments that people were not wearing masks or were working with their hands, maybe not clean hands. Yeah? So for me, when I see countries saying masks are not mandatory, I'm like, please, even if it's only helping, 10 cases, you saved 10 cases, by just saying to people, wear a mask. Stop whining and do this not for you, but for your fellow citizen, for their mother, their grandmother, their parents, their whatever. Yeah. So for me, I don't know what's going to happen. It is already a mess. I'm trying to navigate myself through this as much as possible. I wear a mask every day. I don't have a problem with that. I even wear a mask when I work out. I have to, because I have to work out outside because the gyms are closed. So, and outside here now is mandatory masks.
Yeah.
So I have to, but I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's like oxygen is an issue. But hello, there are people running up mountains with no oxygen. Like it's actually, it adds an additional challenge, and I like a challenge.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what is going to happen? I don't know. When it's going to happen, I don't know either. It's already happened. What should we do? I have no clue.
Right.
I really have no clue. Like there are smart people, way smarter than me, that might have a good suggestion. But for me, it's.
So basically, it's like on a collective level, on a global collective level, we've reduced our planning horizons from potentially years, months, down to weeks at a time, days, weeks, kind of thing. And in countries where savings have not been a priority, and earnings, have been sort of hand to mouth. In those scenarios, it's planning's pretty much been reduced down to the hour level, because
I'm when it comes to money, I'm always pretty happy that my parents taught me that you only take out a loan for one thing, and that's your house, so a mortgage, and everything else, if you can't afford it, then don't buy it. Yeah, save up for it, and then buy it.
My mom taught me that too.
Yeah.
I'm glad I followed it. I'm really glad I followed that.
Yeah, because it is. If I see that people are buying cars on credit, and they're happy that they have, I don't know, like $100,000 in credit, like it's not your money. You didn't win the lottery. Like you still have to pay it. And I don't like it, but there's actually truth to the origin story of Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know if you know that.
I know about it, but which one in specific?
The origin story was that his father was poor, and there was like a rich dad, and basically because his father was always working, but he was actually working to pay off the interest rate. Because there was a spending amount there that was not conform the income. And there's only one way, and that's to break that circle. And at one point, every dollar you pay on interest, is you have to work hard for that. You already pay X amount of tax on that, for everything that you earn, and then you also, like, that taxed income, you're also going to spend a percentage of that to bring back to the credit giver, to the credit card, bank, whatever you use, just because you want to ride a brand new truck, just because you can, because just they give that credit limit. Well, of course, like, you don't have to probably not buy a clunker and that breaks down constantly. But you can also just buy a, I don't know, 7-year-old truck, 10-year-old truck, maybe even 20-year-old truck that just brings you still from A to B. So for me, I'm very glad that my parents said you only you only take out the loan for one thing, and that's your and that's your house. Anything else? Yeah, if you can't afford it, don't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm getting a bit. I'm gonna have to slack off on the booze a little bit here. I can feel myself getting nicely toasted there, but it's really enjoyable. Really enjoyable.
Yeah.
That corn wine. I should look into that corn wine.
Yeah.
Kornbranntwein.
Kornwijn.
Aberloon. What Aberloon? What's that?
Aberlour.
Aberlour.
I think you call it. I don't know. Okay. There was just a bottle that I had at home. And,
I see. Yeah, that's a 40%er. And
the Kornwijn is
38, if I'm correct.
38, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna. That's. Maybe I'll drink a little bit more water. Go a little bit easier.
Hydrate.
Yes, indeed. Now, what other areas can we go into? So you've got what company are you working on at the moment? Are you actively involved in a company now, or is it mainly investment VC sort of stuff?
No,
or are you doing more community stuff?
What I'm doing right now is I have a company where at that point I do projects with, which is helping startups with funding and merger and acquisitions.
Okay.
But also both sides of the table. So high net worth individuals, family offices, how to invest in startups.
So you bring everybody together. So you've got like a round table that brings a whole bunch of disparate parties together.
Usually, for instance, founders come to me, say, I want to do an investment round.
Right.
Can you help me?
Okay.
So at that point, I'll start sitting down with them and where do we need the money for? How are we going to present that to potential investors? How are we going to build up the pitch deck? What kind of data do we need? What kind of data are we going to put in the deck? What kind of data are we going to put in the teaser, etc.? So help them with that, but also at that point help them preparing the due diligence part of it. So, for instance, indeed saying hey, did you already put on paper? Say 2 founders, did you already put on paper?
Right.
If something happens to one of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's going to happen then? Yeah, no, we never really thought about it. Maybe
now's a good time to think about it.
Now's a good time to act on that. Yeah. So not even think, but actually act. Or when they might think of M&A, or they have a potential M&A partner.
Right.
At that point, sit down with them and say, what can we do, me and my partners, to help you get the most buck out of your equity?
Yeah.
What can we do in the next 2 to 3 months to make your company worth more? Yeah. And how are we going to guide that whole process? Also at that point, the negotiations with the M&A partners. Of course, the founders have to do it, but we are there to support them. So that's what we'll do. But in this period of time, that's very tough to do because most of the fundraising and M&A is not coming out of a situation of comfort.
Can you expand on what you mean by it's not coming out of a situation of comfort? Are you referring to the SARS-CoV situation or? Yeah,
usually a project right now, when it comes to fundraising or M&A, comes out of the fact that people are in distress or it's distressed assets.
Oh, yeah. So if you can bring about a solution to current sort of COVID-19 needs or desires, then you're most likely to get. Whereas prior to COVID-19, it was more like, oh yeah, somebody wants to find a parking spot kind of thing.
No, it's more like pre-COVID. Like I have the most value to add. At that point, they can say like, okay, what can we do in the next 3-4 months to make your company more valuable?
Right.
And what you now see is that sometimes I get requests for projects. They're like, hey, we're almost out of money, but we might have a potential buyer. Then I cannot really add value there. Yeah, because they are already distressed assets. Yeah. So at that point, I cannot really. They're already in stress. We cannot just sit down and say, what can we do in the next 3-4 months to make you worth more? No.
Right.
That M&A partner probably already knows that they're in trouble.
Right.
There's not much that we can do at that point. Same thing with funding rounds. Like at that point, they're only there. Yeah. They need money. And then the only thing there is that I cannot add value. The only thing that they reach out to you is we need investors tomorrow or actually yesterday. And I'm like, I'm not the person that just opens up his network to everybody. No, I want to do if I open up my network, it's about a vetted deal.
Well, you also have to keep your reputation within the network.
Yeah.
And you just sort of like throw that under a bus because somebody sort of comes in and says, "Help me."
And then all the dead bodies come out of the closet, and that's something that I want to prevent, and that's also one of the things that I do when I say like, okay, let's see what we what we can do. That I really press them like, hey, did you do something with the university? Yes. Where is the legal and IP from that project? With who owns that? Yeah, I actually don't know. It was already 2 years ago. Like maybe we should find out where the legal IP is of that project. Yeah, I know you have the right to use it, but do you also have the right to sell it? Those kind of things, and that's usually when there is stress, when there is distress assets. Those kind of things often don't go well because people don't have the time to do that. So I don't want to expose my network to those kind of deals.
So your ideal sort of situation is somebody, well, maybe they've gone through a few startups, potentially failed, some successful, and they're not in the stressed situation as you mentioned.
Yes.
And it's more of a relaxed, maybe friends that they're both competent in their own domains for a number of years. They come together and decide to do some sort of startup. Maybe they've got a bit of money behind them. They're both stable, and then from that point of view, that's your favorite sort of situation, configuration to move forward in on.
Yeah, recently a project where 2 founders started the company 4 years ago, bootstrapped a little bit of their own money. Wanted to start raising money for the first time in 4 years. Never had external money.
Okay.
And like cash flow positive, like not gigantic profit, but cash flow. So then you have time to do like, okay, let's sit down and do like 2-3 months. Prepare yourself for the DD. Prepare yourself really for investors. Which data do we need? What are we going to present to investors, etc., etc.
Right. And of course, you would take a cut in the company. Do you normally go for like an equity? How does it work? Or is that a bit too?
No. Usually, it depends, of course, on what type of project. But usually, it's a retainer.
Right.
Just a small retainer. Just so that they can always send me a message, that they don't have to think about like, oh, should we send a message? No, because then otherwise we get an invoice for an hour, etc. No, just a retainer. You can always send me a message. If I respond, then I respond. If I'm busy, not, unless you put 911 in front of it. But so a retainer, and then afterwards a success fee. of when it is, for instance, fundraising. If it's an M&A, then at that point we can even say like, okay, you think now your company is worth X. Let's see then I'll take X% of X, but if I can make it Y, so more than X, then I take X% of that difference. Yeah, and then it's very success based, and I at that point will be very motivated to actually at that point work for those founders, because I have a vested interest in doing it right. So that's in broad terms the way that a project like that can go. Yeah.
Makes sense. That's a good way.
Yeah, but that's usually still like I'll spend way more time in, like, if I would convert that to hourly wage, way more time on them in the like retainer phase than I would actually normally would do with it when I would just do a hourly invoice.
Yeah. But I think also at that stage of retainer stage, probably many startups can't really afford that, but a certain amount of, a retainer is a predictable sort of amount of time that they can allocate, and that allows you to divide your time up more easily between a number of things, and you can take a number of retainers from that perspective. Yeah. Tell me how. I hear that Hong Kong is one of the. They love this word unicorn. But like in the world, Hong Kong is probably one of the better places for cryptocurrency unicorns. What have you heard about this? Have you do a number of sort of cryptocurrency sort of things pass your desk out here, or how does it revolve? How does it work out here in Hong Kong with regard to the?
There's a reason why I did an online course on blockchain. I knew how blockchain works, but I at that point got pitched a lot of ICOs back then.
Oh, this must have been about 17.
Yeah, 17, like 2-3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
On the height of all the ICOs, and me as an entrepreneur thought there's something amiss here. It sounds great if you can raise a shitload of money and then start building a product, but actually that goes indirectly against my things of doing a lean startup way, where you first try to find out what people want and then know what to build and then start raising money. Yeah. So when I got pitched a lot of ICOs, I'm like, so much bullshit around here. Like, it sounds great, but there's no validation. Show me some validation that it is indeed a problem, and that blockchain or whatever, Ethereum, smart contracts, whatever is the solution to this problem, then you have an ear that is listening to you. But most of them could not. So at that point I really wanted to learn more. So at that point I did a course for on blockchain. So probably at that point I already knew 60%. There I learned 95%. By now I've got a 30% again. But I at that point was more capable to put into words what my gut feeling was saying about a lot of those ICOs. And yes, Hong Kong has a lot of cryptocurrency related ventures, let's call it that, because there was no, or still no, regulations when it comes to cryptocurrencies here in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong classified cryptocurrencies as a collectible. You could collect it, which might be worth something, might not be worth something, might increase in value, might decrease in value. But they didn't see it as a fiat currency or as a currency. So the only thing that they said was that a exchange shop or an exchange company that would do foreign exchange could at that point not do anything related to these collectibles. So that was it, and that made a regulatory vacuum where a lot of cryptocurrencies, blockchain companies jumped into, because there was no regulations, and that addresses also a little bit Hong Kong as a regulatory environment that a lot of things are old school here. It's still based on the English law system.
Yeah.
But by now, a lot of those laws are already changed in the UK. Yeah. But are still the same here as they were when the handover was here. Yeah. So not a lot changed. That brings challenges. And when indeed something like cryptocurrencies comes along, yeah, it either fits or it doesn't. And if it doesn't fit, go ahead.
Yeah.
And they don't have they have the power, but I don't know if they want to crack down on that, because it's just a lot of hassle to do.
Right.
With the current law and the current situation with mainland China, basically this being Chinese territory, but it has a different legal system. And a lot of the things here are, I sometimes say, Hong Kong is just minding the store until mainland China takes over. And I know that it seems that way. Yeah. It seems that a lot of innovation that could have been done, of a lot of iterations that could have been done on laws, that could have been done on regulations, are not being done. Because why would they? Because in 20, 30 years from now,
it's just going to go.
It will change anyway. Or maybe they're already planning how to start changing that, so they don't want to change anything else. So otherwise they will get garbage in, garbage out.
I see.
So that creates, in certain places, a regulatory vacuum.
Right.
Where everything can happen.
Right.
And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a politically correct person. I'm not anything when it comes to rules and regulations. The only thing that I know is that if there is a rule that makes sense, I will follow it. But if there's a rule there that doesn't make sense, I will try to find a way around it. And I was actually talking earlier this week with somebody. I had a call with them from a big entrenched corporation here in Hong Kong, a multinational. And I was talking to a few people of their innovation department, and they said, we started this innovation department 4 or 5 years ago, and in the last year, 1.5 years, we see some changes, and they finally now accept PDF as a document and not the actual physical document. So that really says something about Hong Kong, the regulations, the amount of fundamental risk averse there is in Hong Kong and that mindset.
Yeah.
And that's something that probably will take another 2 to 3 years, generations, like 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 generations to get that a little bit up to par. Of course, you already see some people, especially ABC, CBCs, that were educated abroad, came back. They know that there are things out there, but especially when it comes to either the local clerks that are locally educated, maybe spent a month abroad, but that's it, and the top 10 family offices that are here in Hong Kong that are not driving the innovation. They're not driving the force of change. Because I sometimes give the example of why would a family office, we have 10 families here in Hong Kong that owns, I don't know, 80% of all the wealth, something like that, but they're not driving that innovation because why would they?
No, but can you answer that question? Like, okay, why would they? I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, like they don't have to because labor is relatively cheap.
Okay.
Yeah, they go by the rules, and yeah, they don't really care if a cheap labor has to stand in a government office for 2 hours to hand in pieces of paper that could also be done online within 5 minutes with a digital ticketer.
I see.
Yeah, because they don't get that feedback back from the middle management, because the middle management at that point don't want to disappoint their bosses and saying something has to be changed, because that's at that point has to do with the loss of face, cultural aspects of Asia. And I might be generalizing a lot.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
I might be generalizing a lot, and I might skip some steps, but I don't want to like go really deep in that sense. But
okay.
Yeah, there are aspects there that I think have merit, and at that point will take at least 2 or 3 generations to iron that out.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, like I'm that white guy, and no, I don't know everything better, but I've seen how things work abroad, and that's the experience that I bring in. And of course, things abroad work differently and also doesn't always go right. But I know that there are opportunities to be more efficient and to save money. But then again, if local labor is cheap, then you don't do it to save money.
Right.
And yeah, if those kind of incentives are not put in, then yeah, it will be pretty hard. Like it's of course I understand that if they would put in, then at that point a lot of local people would lose their job. Do you want that? Probably not. But there are other ways to start solving that. I don't know. Maybe it's a good time, especially now with COVID, to start looking into a universal basic income.
Yeah, there's a number of people who actually support UBI. I think Musk is one of them. I don't know. I don't know if the Hong Kong culture could do that. The thing is, like, anything requires so much discussion and sort of like, checking point A to point B and then making an advancement, and then, but before you know it, it's already, the time is gone. The time is gone. Yeah. Yeah, Hong Kong. What's your opinion on the current situation with regard to, I mean, from your perspective, in the sense that of being an entrepreneur, looking at the Hong Kong climate, looking at the Hong Kong situation, having the ability to leave if you need to, and very quickly if you want to. What's your opinion on the Hong Kong climate at the moment, as well as into the near future?
Yeah, for people like the Hong Kong people who have no other opportunities, it is what it is. Like, I like it or I may not like it. It's not up to me. I have a escape. I have another passport. Like, of course, I have a Hong Kong ID. I'm a permanent resident, but I have a European passport, so I can go. I sometimes feel for the people who don't have that opportunity. On the other hand, I was in the Netherlands. I was living there. I had no right to be here in Hong Kong, outside of going there for holiday here. But
what do you mean by that? Forgive me. What do you mean you have no right to be here?
Now, let's put that way. I had no right to work here when I just had a European passport.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I came here. Yeah. I set up a business. Yeah. And made it possible to be here.
Right.
Yeah. So I created my own opportunities.
And the same can be done for the local Hong Kong people if they wanted that.
There is an opportunity there.
Sure.
Yeah, like if you start your own business here and you become successful in that, which at that point will also be able to run outside of Hong Kong. And it is a startup in that sense.
Right.
And you go, I don't know, to Silicon Valley, and it's not easy to get a green card in US anyway, but like working visa also not. But maybe it's Europe. Go there. Get investment, say, we're now going to do Europe. I need a working visa. I have this company already built up. We're making X amount of money. I just got investment. We're going to branch out into Europe, but I need a country to start working from. Hello, European Union countries. Who wants me as a entrepreneur who will bring in jobs?
Right.
I'm pretty sure there will be a country saying, here's a working visa. And that means that there are opportunities. And I know, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, that's not for everyone. I know that. But there is still an opportunity. And it's I don't have a solution for everybody in Hong Kong. I don't pretend to have one, but there are still opportunities, and but you have to create them for yourself. Nobody's coming along. Maybe now the UK with the B&O thing, and but nobody's coming along saying, like, I pity on you. Here's a passport. Why don't you come and live with us? On the other hand, for instance, Japan, where there's actually a growing population of elderly, they might want some young people coming over and stay there. So, I don't know. Just brainstorming here.
Yeah, they're rather xenophobic over there in Japan. It's maybe. I think Taiwan's also a place. But I mean, you personally, are you thinking of sticking it out here in Hong Kong?
We came here for 3 to 5 years. We're still here. We have no plans yet. If you would have asked me, say, a year ago, I would have said, well, no plans. Maybe when daughter goes to middle school, something like that. Now, we're monitoring the situation, but still no plans. Nothing changed. If things change, I don't know. It's. I always said I'm not going to retire here. I don't think Hong Kong is a city to retire.
I agree with you.
It's not elderly friendly. And there are better places to spend your retirement.
Yeah. You think of the mountains in New Zealand. You think of, many European countries, even South Africa in the bush. That's not necessarily that friendly to elderly, but still, you can see yourself sitting on the stoep in South Africa, overlooking the bush, listening to the birds and whatnot. Yeah,
stoep, very Dutch word. Yes,
that's right. Oh,
yes.
Yeah, you got it. Okay.
Yes.
I thought that would be more for the South African audience that is actually listening to this podcast. Oh, stoep. So you also use the word stoep.
Yeah, we use the word stoep. If we want to get really fancy, we call it trottoir, like as the French.
Okay.
But mostly it's stoep.
Oh, and when you do that, you sort of is there a little bit of a?
No, like we have quite a lot of, as they call it, loan words from the French,
right?
And also from the German and that kind of thing. Like we call a wallet a portemonnaie.
Right.
We have a parapluie, which is an umbrella. So yes, there is significant amount of similar words that we have loaned from other European languages. So yeah, stoep is for us stoep.
Yeah.
There are probably more South African words that are similar to Dutch, but
this is more Afrikaans. So Afrikaans is, I think it was in 1664. I forgot what the history books were. That there was a number of Dutch settlers that came to move out to South Africa, and that's where Afrikaans sort of originated. So it was a bit of a snapshot of Dutch back then, and it sort of forked along the path.
Yeah, and realized at that point that were probably people not from the province of Holland, but from the more to the east of the Netherlands, because they were probably farmers.
Right.
Yeah. So at that point, they will not be coming from the industrial zones of the Netherlands, but more from the farming parts. So at that point, they will already have a kind of accent.
Okay.
Yeah, like there, I can. If somebody would sit here talking Dutch and he would be from the eastern part of the Netherlands, I would hear that. I would hear that accent.
Okay.
Differently. Yeah. So at that point, you will take that and you will put that into a totally new environment. Yeah. Then that accent, that language will start evolving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I was in Holland, it was I had to really sort of sit down and sort of scrounge up my memory of Afrikaans, learning Afrikaans in high school, which I kind of regret now, you know. I went out of my way not to learn Afrikaans. But, being in Holland, I was like, God damn it. Had I known that learning Afrikaans would have unlocked access into Holland, as well as maybe even Germany, because it's a Germanic language, right? So there are some root words that are kind of similar there. Yeah. I think I might have paid more attention, because I remember thinking, Afrikaans is a dead language. It's a dead language. I don't want to learn this language. So, and then I went off and learned Chinese instead. You know, it's like something so alien and completely different to my own language. Can you speak Chinese?
I know a few words Mandarin, but actually my Mandarin, I knew more Mandarin before I moved here than now.
Yeah, that's the thing about Hong Kong, eh?
That's the thing. Everything is in English.
Yeah, I know.
I know. If it's Chinese, it's Cantonese.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, while everything is in English, there's no reason at all for me.
No, you don't need it.
To learn Chinese. And Chinese, if you really want to learn Chinese, you have to be immersed in it. You have to really have to use it on a daily basis. Otherwise, you just forget.
Yeah.
And there's only like so many times in the evening you can ask your wife. My wife is originally from mainland China. She speaks Mandarin.
Okay.
You can only ask like so many times in the evening in Chinese, what do you want to drink? Yeah. If you get that done, but as soon as you're starting to ask how was work today in Chinese, and you get like a whole brrr in Chinese back, sorry, but my vocabulary is not big enough for that. Yeah. And as soon as you step out and you do grocery shopping, everything is in English.
Yeah.
So it's there's no need, and I sometimes regret that. But what? On the other hand,
not immersing yourself in a culture to speak the language, or what?
That it is bilingual and mostly English here, in at least in the areas where I've lived.
I see.
Yes,
I see. Yeah, look, okay, so I in 2004, I went to go live in Taiwan for 1 year, specifically to learn Chinese. It was a sort of a language immersion sort of thing, you know. I remember walking in there thinking like, I don't know how to even ask for food kind of thing. So I'd be like, they did this, which meant like chopsticks in a bowl, right? Yeah. And I thought, okay, that means food, that means eating. Okay, then I'd just sort of like do this.
Bulare, not spicy.
Yeah. No, I don't mind, because at that point it's just like, just give me food, you know?
Okay.
And I remember arming myself with a little notebook and a pencil, and every sort of word I learned was like this lifeline. Somebody threw a lifeline to you, and you forced yourself to learn these things at night and to remember as much as you could, because that vocabulary just made it just that much easier to communicate your intention to the people around you, whom could not speak a lick of English.
Yeah.
I specifically avoided Taipei because there was a lot of English there, and south of Taiwan, which was Kaohsiung, I avoided that because there's more Taiwanese there. In the middle is more Mandarin, Mandarin speaking. So I recall that. So I was in Taichung for a good year. Okay. And I picked up that language really quickly. Like within a year, I was kind of fluent.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. Like I've been in and out of mainland China for the last 15 years. Oh, yeah. I've traveled a lot in mainland China, but always with now my wife and then a girlfriend also.
But then you also become lazy, you see? Yeah, because it's like a wife's job to do that. And you just sort of like, you pull the bags.
Yes. like, why don't you order food? You know what I like. Let me send a message home. So
I know. I'm in the same situation now. So now that I've been in Hong Kong for so many years now, if I can't do anything, like if everything is pretty much in English, like 90%. Yeah. And if there's something that I do need to do, I can speak Mandarin to be able to do that. Yeah. Cantonese, a little bit more so. But, on the very rare occasions when you can't speak to somebody out here, it'll be some grandmother in the middle of a village somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then even then you just say, lei ho po po, like that, and then that's it. You see what I mean? That's the sum total of interacting with somebody you're unable to speak to out here. So it's very convenient. Yeah. And whereas you might think it's disappointing, I'm actually very happy with it, because I know the exact, the crucial, the gruesome pain of being so involved in an environment that just doesn't speak your language. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I would have liked to learn more Mandarin.
Yeah.
I did my 3rd language course in Mandarin when I moved here at HKU Space.
Yes.
And but that was 8 years ago. 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot it.
Like, I know.
Totally.
I know.
Huh? I know. So it is. Yeah. It is. It's. Yeah. I regret it a little bit in that sense. But on the other hand, I don't know if I would have wanted to live in a village somewhere in mainland China for 5 to 10 years to learn the language. Like,
no. And where does your family? Where does your wife's side?
My wife is originally from Jilin, so Dongbei.
Okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, but I met her when she was studying in Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was she studying?
Finance, economics. So she did Nyenrode University and then started working in finance.
Okay. And then you two moved out here together, right?
Yes.
Now, in the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned that you were, that something happened between.
No.
Okay. Okay. So I inferred
like,
a bit too much information.
No. Yeah, you saw too much in that. Now, what I said in the beginning was there was one word that got me here. That was love, because I went with my wife here. I came with my wife here. So. And that was love, because I didn't want her to go alone.
Okay.
So and then of course we came in 3 to 5 years, and then stayed even at one point when the work where we came for here it changed. So we just stayed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's I still like Hong Kong. It's still a city. It's still my home. Like quite often when I get a taxi driver and I get a little bit of talk with a taxi driver, then at that point, like, oh, how long have you been in Hong Kong? Like almost 10 years. But Hong Kong is home. Like for me, Hong Kong is home. But it's not my it's not my home forever.
You gonna retire back in Holland?
I don't know if it's Holland.
What part of Holland are you from?
I originally from just under Rotterdam, but I used to live in Amsterdam before I moved to Hong Kong. So it's basically, as they call it, the Randstad. Yeah, and so I'm from the south of Holland, and we lived in Amsterdam, which is the north of Holland, before we moved here. Yeah, and that and I always say it's a factor 6 when it comes to housing. So our first apartment here was half the space, but 3 times as much rent. So there's a factor 6, and that calculation still stands. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy out here, man.
Yeah.
But it also sort of teaches you just how much space you don't actually need. So when you go back to
I
your
would
home,
like to have a little bit more space by now.
all right, okay. Well, you have a daughter. You see, you have a daughter.
Yes,
like,
but still, like at one point, like I have to think. But our current apartment is probably something that somebody in the Netherlands would like to have buying as their first apartment.
A single
with
sort of bachelor.
No, but like two people.
Okay.
And maybe one of the first kid with like their first apartment that they bought with their first or second job, salary, whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Not for somebody who's already getting gray here and yeah, like wants to have a little bit more space than that he currently has. What I said, like I'm still think we are like half of what we had back in Amsterdam as an apartment.
Yeah.
And that really at one point it really starts to you start to realize that at one point.
Right.
And then it comes to something that I also want to maybe address tonight here a little bit, is the mental state of people and the mental costs of living in Hong Kong, living in those tight spaces, and also at that point with this COVID situation going on, that you have to stay at home. I actually think that Hong Kong has never been well with taking care of their mental health and also mental health patients.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily what you see now from the startup perspective is that you see a lot of startups trying to jump into that, which I at that point actually would think it's a government task.
I see.
But
so the problem is so great that even startups are now looking at an opportunity to tackle this.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs are actually looking at a thing to tackle this.
Yes.
Whereas governments would be like typical sort of Confucian mentality. Is like, no, this is something we're not going to take on.
Yeah. I've said it before, and it's probably the first time on camera. But when I moved here,
mm-hmm.
it might also be something that relates to where I come from. But when I first moved here, at one point in like a year, or 2 years, I met more persons that should be getting help than I've done 10 years before that back in the Netherlands. Yeah, that are really like, you need help. Because there's something with you, like that your mental state, or you need some help. And that was really an observation of mine, that I said, it's Hong Kong should take better care of their mental health situation, people, whatever it is. And luckily now I see that there are startups coming up. Like other people obviously see the same thing. I don't know. But say we have to do something about that. Yeah. So it is something that I've heard multiple startups in the last year or two that want to tackle a problem like that. Yes. If it's a feasible business, it's something else. But I admire the willingness as a founder to work on that.
But do you not think that one of the success points of Hong Kong is the willingness to let something fail? So, for example, here in Hong Kong, there's nobody who's going to reach out to help you. If your company fails, it's gone. It's gone. There's no sort of like, nanny state going on here. And as a result, if your company does make it, it's going to be a very successful, it could be a very successful company. Whereas in places like Singapore, the government is pushing, is funneling loads of cash into
non-viable startups. Yes.
Yeah. So I suppose, okay, this is not directly applicable to the mental health aspect of what you're just saying, but I think this is sort of like an embodiment, or like there's a resonance, a sort of, of that attitude of just let it fail out here in Hong Kong, and maybe that's carrying over into this, into the mental health thing. It's like, well, you failed, and yep, you took on too much, more than you could handle, and it affected your brain, and because we're in a Confucian sort of society, you should have people to look after you. Do you think there's an element of that?
I don't think so. If it is, then it's pretty sad, because quite often the mental state of a person or something else went wrong in the brain is, I think, maybe not due to something that they did. It might be a chemical imbalance somewhere, something like that. I don't know, something they cannot prevent. So I don't think so. But to get back to what you said about Hong Kong as being a tough city, I always said that if you are a startup or a company in Hong Kong and you're still operational after 8 to 12 months, then at that point there's probably something there. Either you have a viable business because you're generating cash flow, so at that point you can pay for your rent and your staff, or you have a very interesting story to tell or story to sell to investors, so they keep pouring money into you. Everything else fails before the 8th month. Or there are other streams of income. So I actually like that, in the sense is it will shift out the entrepreneurs very quickly. And I've met a lot of entrepreneurs in Singapore. At one point, I was talking to a very well-funded international company, startup company in Singapore. It was an international, and he was running the Singapore part of it as a country manager. And he said, at one point, the Singapore government came to me and said, we can give you some money to buy 10 new laptops, for instance. And he said, like, I'm fully funded, like, I don't need that. Yeah, but here's the money. Yeah, but here's the money. So he bought 10 new laptops. Yeah, so that's the other side. So you can also go the other way. But then again, now Singapore is quite seen as a very good startup hub. It is, of course, also there a lot of startup entertainment. I quite often have a...
Could you please expand on what you mean by startup entertainment?
Startup
this
entertainment.
This is a terminology I've not heard before.
You know that? Okay. No. Startup entertainment are the events, the talks, the fluffy accelerator programs, the pitch competitions with $1,000 in funding if you win. That's all startup entertainment. That doesn't really add value to your company. That doesn't really add value to your knowledge of your customer segment. That's only there to the benefit usually of the organizer, and that's quite often only makes you into a performing seal. And I call that startup entertainment. There's a lot of startup entertainment, and sometimes that's fine. Like that's it's good for networking, but use it at that. Like, don't expect to get clients out of that. Don't expect to whatever you're expecting probably from that to happen. Now, if you use it for your network and solely that, and you don't spend a lot of time in preparing, that's fine. But I've seen founders prepare for a event held in Hong Kong with a potential to pitch for an audience, and they would work probably like 2 full days on their pitch. And I'm like, why? You're a duck and you're presenting in front of a room full of other ducks, because usually at that point the audience is other startup people, and you're selling, I don't know, car parts. Those ducks aren't going to buy your car parts. And the chance that there is a very wealthy duck in the audience that at that point says, I want to invest in you, you probably would have saved your way more time if you just done your quick due diligence and online search, which very wealthy ducks are in Hong Kong that might be interested in investing in my car parts startup. Because that probably is a 1 hour search away, and not the 2 days that you spent on preparing your pitch.
I hear you. Yeah.
I might be exaggerating here a little bit, but yeah.
No. It's a circus act, and every single one of these domains, or even in programming world, they've got their little circus acts. Like, oh yeah, we do startups, and they start writing code in areas which have got no bearing on solving the problem at hand. So this is a very common thing. But for me, Singapore, there's a side of me, the communist side of me, that says, yes, let's go down to Singapore. You can get some free money, But
that's okay if you also pay the tax there.
What?
If you pay the tax.
But I heard the tax is a lot. It's significantly better than many other places. It's like number two in the world, isn't it?
I don't know, but I think it's a little bit less than Hong Kong, something like that. But yeah, still,
I think Hong Kong is one of the best, probably the best.
We have like 17%, 16%,
yeah,
17%.
17.5, I think 17.5. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you're a business owner and you give yourself a profit sharing, so at that point basically capital gain, then at that point you don't pay tax at all.
There's no capital gain tax
No.
at all here in Hong Kong,
Yes.
which is fantastic when it comes to trading, for example, cryptocurrencies and whatnot. Fantastic. One of the good things. Yeah, one of the good things. Are you at all into cryptocurrency? Or is this a subject that you sort of cringe at?
No, definitely not. It's been the best investment ever.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like for me. Now let's put it that way. It's the best. How to
divestment?
No, like it has been the best. I wouldn't say gamble, but
an informed gamble.
The best speculation ever.
Okay.
Yeah, let's call it the best speculation ever. Of course, in hindsight, I would have
done a lot more.
I should have bought a lot more, but no, it still is. Like, even if it goes down to whatever $3,000 tomorrow, it still is the best investment ever.
Yeah.
But I don't know actually what it is right now. Like, I think it's still above 10,000, right? But anyway,
it's about 11,000 something now.
Yeah, but it's just, for me, like, I think it has no merit to any normal investment. It's purely speculation. Nobody knows where it comes from. It's manipulable. You can manipulate it. I still remember the time when that whole like Bitcoin Cash came out, and they started to manipulate the Bitcoin network by trying to up the which is an accusation that's I cannot prove, but the word goes around that the Bitcoin Cash used their income to up the transaction cost of Bitcoin transactions.
Right.
Yeah, so do a lot of small transactions with a higher transaction fee. So at that point, people who actually wanted to do a transaction had to pay more for their transaction and then go it up. And then at that point saying, oh, but if you go to Bitcoin Cash, you pay less for your transaction.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the word that's going around. I can't substantiate that. If, again, somewhere down in the comments here, if you have a good explanation for that, I'm happy to be get some explanation on that. But yeah, it is. I find it very interesting. There is definitely something there. I still think Bitcoin will be the most mature one. But I've done one ICO that didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was very optimistic. What I earlier said, a little callback here, but the marketing people who were, when that whole startup ecosystem started up, when that was like dying down a little bit and cryptocurrency came up, they jumped in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to laugh because at one point I saw a little video that was I think a blockchain conference somewhere, and he would go around the little stalls of different companies and would ask them, can you explain what a blockchain is? And the answers that came from those people that were standing there like, you have to like buy our coin and blah blah. What is actually a blockchain? And the answers that came from that was like nowhere near what it should be. So, and still, like, if you want to do something and you say you want to do it on a blockchain, but everywhere in your business plan you could replace blockchain with database and it still makes sense, then use a database.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, it is Satoshi had something there. It works, obviously. Nobody was able to really like crack it or hack it. Beside of wallets that being hacked and that kind of thing.
Those on the perimeter.
Yeah.
The connecting bits, the edge bits, not the core protocol.
No, on the edge everything happened. The protocol itself, not as far as I've heard. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
While when
short of bugs, there have been bugs in the protocol which were fixed, and then stuff was sort of rolled back and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you at that point look at all the spin-offs, and look at things that are happening there or has been happening there, 51% attacks, smart contract attacks, that kind of thing. Still, my go-to currency is Bitcoin.
Yep. And you're familiar with the supply shock? Every 4 years there's a supply shock.
Yeah.
And then it takes about a year for the price to normalize.
Yeah, to normalize, yes.
You're riding it, aren't you?
Nah, no. I actually have to honestly say that my crypto holdings are not worth not worth pursuing anything. Let's put it that way. I've gotten out of that like already a long time ago. I still have some, but that's more because it's like I wouldn't say it's challenging to sell them, but yeah, it is there and it is there. Like it's more that if tomorrow that one Bitcoin goes up to $100,000, then I have $100,000. It's not that I can buy, I don't know, a car of it. No, definitely not. It's at one point I was thinking like, yeah, should I sell it or not? But then again, I was like, yeah, what I'm going to do with it? Like if I sell that now, like I don't need a car. I don't need a new kitchen. If I sell it, I cannot buy a house of it. I cannot buy a Lamborghini of it. I cannot buy a island of it. So why do I even bother? Yeah. So I actually said at one point to one of my potential investment, like, do you also accept crypto? Because then at that point, I sent you the money in crypto right now to your wallet. No. We want fiat currency. So otherwise, I would have at that point we'd be able to do my first crypto investment in a conventional startup. But yeah.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I should line up a few companies for you if you were interested in that.
No, I'm getting way too frugal for that right now. Happy to help them, but no, it is.
So the bars.
Diversity portfolio. Like some people say, you have to diversify your portfolio, so they go into Bitcoin and Ether and Ethereum, and they go into OneCoin, and they go into anything else or derivatives of that. And I'm like, that's not diversifying. Like diversifying is something in crypto, something in the stock market, something in real estate, something in early stage startups, something in fixed return. That's diversifying.
Right.
And that's, yeah. And actually, for me, my wife is the investment manager of the family. So everything that I earn, I have to give to her because she's the fund manager. For me, it's like, yeah, I just have to give that to her. It's not much, but everything I have.
Yeah.
You're married to an Asian woman, right?
Oh, yes. You know how it works. That's the way it works around here. But it's okay. I'm all right. Life is great.
Yeah.
Life is great. I couldn't have asked. But although my wife is now, well, there's a kitchen that needs to be done. She wants a new kitchen, and then also after all this stuff that's been going on in the streets in Hong Kong, it's like maybe we can look at another country now. So it's like, where should we go? Should we just hold on a little bit longer? You know, like we can think about this country. It's like I have a British passport too, and now that the UK has
opened up to
the rest of the world. Yeah, saying it a very polite way. The passport has turned blue.
It's a very expensive blue color.
That's a very expensive blue color. I was used to having a nice pink, reddish color that got me nearly anywhere in the world. It's going to be a different story now. But I don't know. Hey, like maybe UK is close enough to the rest of Europe that Europe would be like, yeah, all right, just come in, get it over and done.
No, actually, also now that they are in the process of also, or maybe at that point, accept BNOs from Hong Kong. I don't know. Like, it's not that the UK is on a very good position right now, like work-wise. there are not a lot of jobs, as far as I know. Like, I'm not a specialist, but if there's an influx of people from Hong Kong with a B&O passport that are eligible to work in the UK, that at that point probably will not be able to work in the similar kind of work as they did here, that's going to be a challenge. I don't know. They probably address that, and they probably think about that, and they probably have a solution for that, but I'm happy to hear it. Again, in the comments, please. It is. I don't know. That is going to be a challenge, because it will be, I think, totally different if, I don't know how many people we're talking about, but if there is a significant amount of people moving from Hong Kong to the UK, based upon that B&O.
Yeah. So I remember reading an article about one of these mega wealthy, I forgot his name, property developers. He actually went out to Ireland. Now, my wife and I, we've gone to Ireland to set our main sort of guise for choosing for traveling is to look for another country that we can go and live in. And one of the countries we chose was to go to Ireland and check it out. And this fellow had also gone to Ireland, and he said for tax reasons the tax rate is very good, but also the people there are really great. They're really good. Just on a side note, I decided not going to Ireland because I would get liver cirrhosis if I went to go live in Ireland. And he was looking at purchasing a large tract of land out there in the middle of Dublin and some other city, I forgot, and to create like this sort of micro Hong Kong sort of environment and move out a number of Hong Kongers to here to sort of recreate. That was the initial plan, but then they thought, no, let's not do that, because we want to be able to integrate with society over there. That's kind of exciting. That's like sort of like frontier stuff. That's sort of like the English going over to Americas to do like frontier pioneer stuff. It's kind of like a group of Hong Kongers going out there and doing that. I would be interested in that. I would be interested in that and join that thing. Because the thing is, like, I've learned never to bet against Hong Kongers. Don't bet against them, because it might be slow. The legal system is still all paperwork. The government is dog slow, and they're stubborn as all get out. But there's something about Hong Kongers that are, like really, really interesting. There's a mix of sort of like, advanced modernism, being able to interact and interface with the rest of the world, but yet also they're very conservative and sort of moving slowly along these lines. I think that would be quite fun. But then that's sort of pitted away. And I think that Hong Kongers have sort of like, there needs to be a readjustment in the minds of people here in Hong Kong. And that is not to, I think, look at the mainland and say, they are them, they are the other, so to think. It's almost like sort of being able to integrate that which is going on in the mainland and sort of like becoming one. How does Hong Kong actually help China, such that the rest of China looks at Hong Kong and thinks, well, great, we've got this, our elder son that's went to go study abroad at some university has now come back with all these ideas and whatnot. So Hong Kong can fulfill a similar sort of role. And I think that's something sort of interesting, is the fusion of the free speech, habeas corpus, these self-sovereignty, individual sovereignty, these sort of concepts of enlightenment in the West. Something that's brought about, the study of science, the revelations of the scientific method and all the fruit that is born from that. How does that integrate into the Confucius sort of society of the leader, the elder father of the family, like maybe Xi Jinping is seen as the father of the Chinese society, and therefore he protects them. And in my previous Indaba, I was speaking to Gareth Hayes, and he was saying, like, it's more the U.S. culture versus the Chinese culture. The U.S. culture is less susceptible to being exploited by psychopaths, whereas it seems like maybe the Chinese culture has more of an immune system against psychopaths, in the sense that you get your older part of the family, so to say, it's their role, and with their worldwide more knowledge and experience in society, they're able to isolate, diagnose, and remove psychopaths from the scenario, where a psychopath is an individual that will come in and exploit and take any money that's on the table and not contribute, essentially, like this. Whereas in America, they got completely exploited, in the sense of, like, the Americans handed over their gold to a select group of bankers, and they had everything, but then lost everything by handing it over. I think in the I forgot what year, but they passed a law where everybody had to hand over their gold.
Yeah.
So, like, places like India and China probably wouldn't do that. So it's interesting to see, and Gareth's hypothesis was that China, back then 15 years ago, China was in a situation where they wanted Hong Kong to help China, and then Hong Kong, who's sort of like looked, basically knows more about the West than they do about China, which is across the border. Instead turned their back on China, and as a result, throwing the Chinese flag in the water, all the protests, etc. Whereas maybe Hong Kong should have taken a more of a proactive stance in trying to integrate with China, trying to assist China to open up. Well, actually, Hong Kong really did do that, by interfacing with the West and bringing, enabling China to connect with the West. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's this whole sort of group think. In the West they've got this concept of, like, Marxism. Well, in also China and Russia, but Marxism seems to have been sort of influenced by Confucianism. So Confucianism, I might be just, maybe I'm the ranting of a drunk man at the moment, but maybe give me a little bit of a moment. It's almost like the rampant Marxist mentality has been constrained by the Confucius mentality, which is the relationships. You've got your relationships between husband and wife, employer, employee, your children, friends, siblings, and maintaining these relationships keeps a cohesive whole. And has an emergent effect on the whole of society, but it lacks the self-sovereign free speech, because in those environments one doesn't speak freely, you see, because you might be speaking out against your elder, and as a result you don't actually have access to the bleeding edge of scientific methods and the fruits of scientific methods, which naturally come about by adopting free speech and these sorts of approaches. But here in Hong Kong, it seems like there seems to be a lovely balance between the East and the West. So how does Hong Kong integrate, sort of go back to the original root of Confucianism? And the family relationships, yet still maintain and integrate that free speech, self-sovereignty, habeas corpus mentality, such that even both the East and the West, America as well as China, can learn from this. Yeah, it's we're talking very, very high level. Yeah, it's nothing boots on the ground at the moment. There's no potholes on this particular road to fix.
Okay.
As an entrepreneur who was probably tapping his fingers on the table, thinking, when are you getting to the pothole that you can actually fix instead of this,
Where's the mea culpa here?
Yes, pretty much, exactly. Yes. I don't know. Do you have any sort of does anything sort of come to mind as I say these things?
Now, what is for me is that Hong Kong has always been unique in that sense, but you have to don't forget Hong Kong is still the result of colonialism, right?
Right.
And
I'm going to risk it. I'm going to risk one more.
Okay.
Keep going. Okay. So Hong Kong is still a result of colonialism.
Yeah, and I would have wondered what Hong Kong would have become if there was no British Empire to control it. It will probably be just another island off the coast of China. It was fisherman.
It was a fishing village.
It was a fishing village.
Oh, on a side note, did you see there was a? I interrupted you, but the story's worth it. The story's worth it.
Yeah.
There was an old Scottish photographer that came out here on the dawn when photography, the pinhole cameras.
Yeah.
He came out here with a number of slates and pinhole cameras, and he took a series of photographs, and they were on slates, and they were in some attic in Edinburgh. About maybe 6 years ago, those prints were professionally put onto paper and whatnot, and they had an exhibition at the Maritime Museum down there by
the pier.
By the pier, exactly. Unbelievable. Looking at the contrast between Hong Kong then and the Hong Kong now.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Fisherman village it was.
Yeah, there's actually a podcast which it's a podcast about history in China. And I have to check what the name is if I can find it at all, but and it has a significant amount of episodes about Hong Kong. And
maybe you could find out. So I'd like to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll find out. We put it down in the show notes.
You love that. You love that. Sort of, you put it down there.
Click on the link here above.
What are you forgetting? Don't forget to subscribe.
Yes, don't forget to subscribe
and comment.
Push the bell button. Anyway,
I'm deliberately avoiding that. Oh,
okay. No, it is a podcast. He has a lot of podcasts about the history, and he did at one point a whole series about Hong Kong, and that was very interesting to hear. He also had at one point a podcast about some of the captains of industry, the tycoons here in Hong Kong. Had a episode about that one and that one and that one and that one. So I would say just go to that podcast, just filter on everything that has to do with Hong Kong, and then download those and listen to them. But Hong Kong has a very interesting history, even before the British arrived, and it's you really learn what you say about don't bet against the Hong Kong people. Yeah. Of course, it's a little bit diluted right now because there's like how many people really are second or third generation Hong Kong people here, but it's amazing to hear the history of Hong Kong in that sense, and they are resilient and they are creative. In the 60s, they went out with barges and with stolen cars and bring them to mainland China, and it's crazy. I'm 100% sure that if you know the right connections, you can go to mainland China tonight without even showing your passport. I'm 100% sure.
Let me tell you something. I bought bees. I used to keep bees.
Okay.
The bees were smuggled into Hong Kong. So I know you can do it. I know you can definitely do it. Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and yeah, like when you really go deeper into the history also of Hong Kong, it's not an easy problem that we have on hand right now. And I feel like I'm in that sense quite I have quite a lot of compassion with the youth here, which are putting in a position that they didn't want to be in. But on the other hand, it is what it is, and there's nothing you and I or a lot of other people can do about that. And I've learned already a few years ago not to get too upset about things I cannot change. And that really, for me, applies to this situation. Like, I cannot change anything. Yes, I'm eligible to vote, but my vote is only worth 49% at the max. Yeah, so I cannot change things here. So I have to go with the flow. I may like it, I may not like it, but that's not up to me. And it is. I will try to be adaptive as possible, and I don't always like what happened also during the protest situations from the Hong Kong side. Like, you don't pour a liquid over somebody and set him on fire. You don't hit Mandarin speaking woman until they start bleeding. No. And then of course, you have the whole like misinformation, infiltration, that kind of thing. Should you believe that side or shouldn't you believe that side? I don't know. Like, I can only believe what I see with my eyes and can verify, and at that point know what the backstory is. There's a famous drawing or sketch actually also goes around on the internet, where you see a TV camera and you see on the TV camera you see somebody attacked with a knife, but then it zooms out and then you actually see the real picture, which is like exactly the other way around. So I don't know. I don't have a solution. For me it's about the things that I can change and the things that I can influence, and the safety of my family and health and safety. That's the most important thing for me. So yes, I wear a mask, I wash my hands, I try to stay out of contact as much as possible. There's more than 1.5 meter distance between us here. Yeah, it's that's what I can do.
True. Very positive note. It would be good if more people did this. We can kill this virus in its boots.
Yeah, what I saw this morning is that we're like just getting over the hump now. Yeah, it's still like I have a whole conference that I rescheduled until the beginning of September, but I don't think I can hold it in the beginning of September, so it will probably be later, so I have to reschedule it again. But
conference organizers are, it's terrible for everybody. It's terrible.
No, actually, I was organizing the conference, and when I was organizing it, I thought like I was quite positive. I'm always somebody who sees the positive side. And at that point, I was okay with having the amount of 50 people for that conference. That would have been the smallest conference I have ever organized. But I think like at that point, we're getting back there. We can do 50 people. Let's do it. The people are motivated to see each other again. Let's do this. And at that point, I was thinking, should I do it the 4th of July or the 11th? And then we decided to do it the 11th because then we would have one more week to arrange everything.
Okay.
And to get more people, audience in, and to arrange everything with sponsors and with the speakers and that kind of thing. And on the 9th, on 4 p.m., the government said no more 50 people.
Yeah.
So
just as well.
I had, of course, at that point, so like, of course, it was slowly building up. So as of that Monday, I was like, oh, should I do it on Saturday? And then on that Thursday, they said, no way. So I had no option anyway. So at that point, I had to reschedule everything.
I think we'll knock this on the head. This wave will definitely knock it on the head. Now that, you see, I think the main issue was the Hong Kong government was allowing people, seafaring people, the ferries.
250,000, right?
Say me?
250,000 people.
That's right.
Yes.
That's a large amount of people coming into Hong Kong.
That's a large amount of people, yes.
Yes, and...
untested.
So I understand their rationale, which is it's inhumane for them because so many countries are turning them away. They've been at sea for how many months? 6 months now because so many countries are turning them away. But yeah, maybe some sort of a quarantine sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the original name of quarantine came from, which I think was 4 weeks, wasn't it? 4 weeks.
Quarantine.
Quart. So which means that you had to be like 4 weeks on the ship before you could actually come onto land. So it's like, we're doing quarantine with airlines and trains and whatnot, but when it comes to ships, let's go back to the roots. Start with the ships, right? Jeffrey, we have been knocking on for 3 hours now.
Okay.
Let us conclude this. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Stewart. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for bringing this wonderful booze. Fantastic. I've never had kornwine before. Kornwein before.
Kornwijn.
Kornwijn.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
This is the perks of doing these sorts of indabas. These are the perks. And I wish you the best.
I wish you too the best.
Thank
you very much for having me.
Yes, all right. Now let me kill things. Okay, so all right. Great stuff.